the Miami Dolphins made some major additions last offseason, especially considering the moves on the offensive line, running back, and of course, the big trade to go and get Tyreek Hill, wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I thought that the Miami Dolphins were going to be a serious threat to the Buffalo Bills in 2022. And considering that they started out 3-0, Tua Tagovailoa looked really good to start out the year. You know, you got a really strong comeback against the Baltimore Ravens, and you got an upset win over the Buffalo Bills. You know, you thought the Miami Dolphins were going to be one of those teams that were going to really make a run to the playoffs. But then that win against the Bills was where the problems started to begin. Because quarterback Tua Tagovailoa suffered the first of what ended up being a trilogy of concussions. And from there, along with the poor play of the team in December, ended up being the team's downfall. They got the same 9-8 record, and you know they had a fighter's chance. Surprisingly, against the Bills in the 3 match that they had in the playoffs, but it was not to be. Despite, you know, even leading at one point against Josh Allen, the Bills. But they ended up losing that game against Buffalo in the playoffs. And, well, a lot of people like me were wondering, like, well, what's next for the Miami Dolphins? What's next for Tua? Is he going to be able to stay healthy next season? So, nonetheless, you're here now. Tua is healthy, hopefully. But now the thing is, you have to keep him healthy if you want to accomplish your goal for this coming fall, and that is to try and win the AFC East. So looking at some of my offseason priorities for the Miami Dolphins, and I talked about them back in February, is that you have to keep Tua healthy. You got to upgrade the interior offensive line because they did a good job of upgrading the exterior at tackles, but their interior was surprisingly a little bit shoddy. That's where things start to fall apart in terms of, you know, keeping Tua healthy. That's where he got hit a lot in that season. So you had to find a little bit more depth at guard, and then add some depth in the defensive line behind Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips because, before Bradley Chubb came along in that trade, it's like they didn't really have a lot of pass rushing help in that department. So just adding Bradley Chubb in that trade deadline, you know, they didn't do a whole lot, to be honest with you. So they certainly could have used some help there. So looking at what the Dolphins did in the offseason, one of the big things that they got was trading for Rams corner Jalen Ramsey. So they made a big trade to help out their secondary. So they got one of the top corners in the league. You know, he's a little bit on the older side, but still, he can still play at a pretty strong level. They did trade away tight end Hunter Long, but you know he was a backup anyway. But hey, you're getting some help for your secondary. So in light of that trade, they released Byron Jones as part of the trade, and then tight end Mike Gesicki went to the New England Patriots. So kind of a loss there. But then again, you can only throw the ball to so many people in that offense. That what are you gonna do, man? And then looking at some of their re-signings, they re-signed both of their running backs, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. Not bad. And then some of their additions via free agency and the draft. You have safety Deshaun Elliott from the Detroit Lions. I think he could be a solid help in that already pretty solid defense. Linebacker David Long from the Tennessee Titans. And then just in case Tua gets hurt again, backup quarterback Mike White from the New York Jets. As I talked about, Mike White, you know, he provides some solid backup experience, but there are times where he can kind of kill you with turnovers. And then receiver Braxton Berrios from the New York Jets also comes over to the Dolphins. So another receiving option for Tua. And then in the draft, they didn't have a lot of draft picks to work with because of various trades that they committed in prior years. So I believe they only had 4 of them, and 3 of them were pretty notable. So looking at their draft, they drafted corner Cam Smith from South Carolina, running back Devon Achane from Texas A&M, and receiver Elijah Higgins from Stanford. So looking at the Dolphins offseason and their moves, my biggest one that stood out to me is like, why didn't they prioritize the offensive line more? Like at any point in the offseason. Like, they certainly knew that they needed more blockers, especially on the interior, whether it was as starters or depth. Like, yet they didn't use any of the money, like whether it was little or big money that they had in free agency, or one of the 4 draft picks that they had. Because you certainly could have used like one of your draft picks at let's say guard over a running back. So I'm just saying, like, you could have used like any one of your resources to go and get some help at the offensive line. Because, you know, your current offensive line is, when healthy, it's good, but it's like, just like Tua, it's, some of them can't stay healthy. So they really better hope that the offensive line can protect Tua this season and at the same time stay healthy. And then on the defensive end, they're going to need rookie corner Cam Smith to really step up his game. But why do I say that? Well, that's because Jalen Ramsey, their trade acquisition, well, he got injured. He got injured early on in training camp, and he suffered a serious meniscus injury that's going to keep him out for most of the season. So he's not going to be back until, I believe, December. So a really big loss early on for the Miami Dolphins. So yeah, that's the best course of action for him, you know, to keep his career going, having the full procedure. But if Cam Smith's going to be the one replacing him, opposite Xavier Howard, then he's going to have to be the guy that steps up big. Those are big shoes to fill in replacement of Jalen Ramsey. Looking at some of the key games of 2023, week 1, you have to travel to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. And right after that, you have to go to New England to take on the Patriots. So a 2-game road stand to begin the season. And then week 4, you travel to Buffalo to take on the Bills. So like three of the 4 weeks early on in the season, kind of like important ones. So Chargers, Patriots, Bills, like 2 division games early on in the season. And then week 7, you go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Tua versus Jalen Hurts. You know, that Alabama rivalry. You know, that little taste in the national championship. Remember, for some of you that remember that, I don't know. And then week 9, they go to Germany to take on the Chiefs. They're technically the road team in that game, but still a big challenge there. Whether it's in Kansas City or in Germany, they got to find a way to limit Patrick Mahomes in a very important AFC game. So, of course, the big question surrounds Tua Tagovailoa. Can the Dolphins keep him healthy? Last year, they didn't do a really good job of that. And they didn't even really do a good job of just like overall maintaining his health. Like the overall concussion situation, like they didn't handle that very well. So the Dolphins have to do well in protecting Tua, and Tua himself. You know, he has to do better in terms of recognizing pressure as well. Like he has to recognize oncoming pressure so he can protect himself. So overall, you know, for the Dolphins to succeed this season, they have to keep Tua healthy. So looking at this season, looking at their outlook, you know, the Dolphins have a lot of difficult opponents on their schedule. You know, and a good chunk of them coming in the first half of the season, like the Chargers, the Patriots, the Bills, the Eagles, the Chiefs. You know, a lot of it's on the road too. But then things should ease up a little after their bye week once they're done in Germany. But again, that direction is going to dictate on, as I said repeatedly, the ability to keep Tua Tagovailoa healthy as possible. And actually completely healthy. If they can keep him healthy, great. They have a very good chance to snatch the division away, but possibly from the Bills and the Jets. If Tua gets hurt again, he has to miss time. You have to put in Mike White. Then it's just going to be another repeat of 2022. It's going to be another rerun of that year. Perhaps even worse than that. So the Dolphins, they got to do all they can to keep Tua Tagovailoa healthy. If he stays healthy, I expect them to go 10-7, if not better than that. If they can't keep him healthy, yeah, it's going to be below that. So Dolphins, you got to keep your man healthy. Otherwise, you're going to sink down the river. Down the river, water, the beach, whatever. Keep your man healthy, Miami.